Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today's is a good one. In the past, I've done a lot of videos talking about the importance of forage species. If you understand the forage species, you can locate the predator species. It's one of the most important things in fishing, regardless of fish that you're after. Could be bluegill, could be bass, could be walleye. If you know their forage, you can understand where the game fish is going to be. So in the past, I've done a lot of videos talking about 5 things that you need to know about certain forage. So today we're going to do 5 things that you need to know about alewife. And alewife, guys, I got to tell you, there are some funny things to do with alewife. One of the things that I've always remembered since my freshwater marine biology days in college was the definition of an alewife. And I wrote this down, guys, so that I don't misspeak, because I don't want you to think I'm making this up. This is straight from Wikipedia, actually. The alewife term comes from the front of the body being deep and larger than other fish found in the same waters, and its common name is said to come from comparison with a corpulent female tavern keeper. And just to be clear, corpulent also means fat. So apparently they gave the fish alewife their name because they look similar to a fat female tavern keeper. Something to think about. Anyways, guys, so let's talk about the alewife. And before I get into these 5 things, I want to remind you that if you're looking to maybe get some help on a lake that has alewife, check out my lake breakdowns. The link is in the description. I'm doing them through fishthemoment.com with Johnny Schultz as well as Randy Blockett. We have lakes all over the country covered, so check those out. Link is in the description. So let's talk about alewife. The first thing that I think you want to know is that they're part of the herring family. And one thing that we know about herring is that they constantly are in movement. So just because you locate alewife in one location one day, it does not mean they're going to be there the next day. So being part of the herring family means that these fish are constantly moving. So that's the number one thing that you need to know. The second thing has to do with where their location is. Alewife specifically range primarily from about North Carolina north up the East Coast and then come over through the Great Lakes region and up into Canada. So we have them here in Wisconsin. They've got them up in the Canadian area north of me, and then pretty much all over towards New York and Maine and those locations. But there is a pretty good range of alewife. And then because they are part of the herring family, a lot of this relates back over to, say those who have blueback herring down in the southeast. So there's a lot of similarities here. They are not specifically the same fish, but they are similar. So the range is good to know, because if you have a lake that has alewife, then you may want to be targeting them because they get big. The third thing I want to mention is they get to be up to about 16 inches in size, which is big, but if you're talking about maybe being a muskie angler or a pike angler, they can eat a 16-inch alewife, no problem at all. But the majority of these fish are much smaller. I mean, you're talking about fish that generally range from about 4 to 10 inches, which is absolutely perfect for a big bass to eat. So alewife are a very, very big forage species for largemouth. So from that standpoint, we want to go, well, where do alewife live? Well, the first thing that we want to understand about alewife is that because they're constantly moving, they don't really have a home base, right? They don't really, you can't say they're going to be on this hump or this break line because they're following the forage. And just like I said before with bass or game fish, you want to know where the forage is. It's the same thing with the alewife. You want to know what they feed on. And alewife primarily feed on zooplankton, small crustaceans, shrimp, really small fish eggs, that type of thing. But zooplankton is one of the biggest forage species for them. So if you're looking specifically for alewife, you need to find the zooplankton. And as I've talked about in the past, zooplankton is one of those things that kind of suspends in the middle of the water column during the days. And then once the sun sets and the moon comes out, they actually rise to the surface, which is why you see shad, because they feed on zooplankton. you see in the mornings them higher up in the water column, and then they sink down later in the day. So if you're looking to target fish that are feeding on alewife, generally what that means is they're going to be suspended fish in the middle of the day, and then they're going to be higher up in the water column later on. So, the key areas to look for alewife, in my opinion, if you're out during the day, if you've got deep humps or deep points, that may be, say, in 25 feet of water, generally more like thermocline-ish, you can find fish, those suspended fish will be pushing the alewife into the side of a hump, into the side of a ledge, into the side of a point, and using that landmass to corral the alewife. So your best luck is generally going to be fishing areas that have a piece of land that comes through the thermocline that the fish are using, because a lot of times the fish don't necessarily want to go below the thermocline either. It kind of creates a way for them to box off those fish. So it's really kind of an important way to target them. You're talking about throwing bigger swim baits, bigger spoons, big crankbaits, anything that mimics a shad profile is what you're looking for, and can be absolutely dynamite on these suspended fish. It's hard to find them, but if you graph around, you can usually find balls of the alewife, and that's where the fish are going to be located. It works for all major game fish. I know a lot of guys chase muskies doing the same thing. Big walleyes will be on them as well. It's really just a pattern for big fish, because a lot of the big fish love to feed up on alewife. Another thing that you want to know about alewife is that they are ocean fish that generally come up freshwater streams to spawn during the spring months. So there's a lot of alewife that will come up and go back to the ocean, but over the years there's a lot that have become landlocked and have become basically freshwater fish. They've moved all the way up through the Great Lakes. They've gotten into basically all the bodies of water that connect to the Great Lakes. So they really are spread out all over the place. But because they have major runs in the spring, that can be one of the best ways to target big fish, because as we know, if the alewife are running up the rivers, you're going to have bigger game fish taking advantage of that same thing. Around the Great Lakes, a lot of times what you'll see is those game fish will set up right around the river mouths and feed heavily on the alewife, as the alewife are swimming off the main lake to go up the rivers, and coming out after they spawn back into the lake. You'll find those can be really good locations to fish during the spring months, because that's when they're spawning. But really, guys, what it comes down to with the alewife is that they're consistently moving. You want to find the zooplankton. You want to be able to graph them. You want to find high percentage spots like your humps, your points, places that the game fish can corral the alewife. You're looking for, during the spring season, they're going to be shallow. During the warmer periods, they spend most of their time deeper. At night, they will rise back up to the surface some. From a bait perspective, you're talking about bigger spoons, bigger swim baits, and a lot of just different types of like fluke style baits. As we know, it's similar down for the blueback herring. Guys love throwing their flukes. They love throwing their CBOT magic swimmers, things like that. They mimic the alewife really well up in the Northeast and the upper Midwest as well. But guys, it's a fish that is kind of hard to target. A lot of times it requires a lot of movement from a daily basis, but the reward is really good, because the fish that are feeding on alewife are generally better quality fish. So if you can get it figured out, you can have some trophy caliber fish that you're catching. But alewife are definitely a main forage species for fish throughout a good part of our country. They are a primary fish that kind of shows the overall quality of a lake as well. And that's one of the things that we're starting to see with alewife, is that their populations are declining pretty severely, because of the fact that a lot of their spawning habitat has been either taken away through dams or just man-made destruction to streams and creeks, and the water quality is dropped off. So we're starting to see a pretty good drop in the alewife population in a lot of places. I believe the Great Lakes, at least I know, like Lake Michigan was full of them at one point, but I think they're the lowest numbers that they've ever been. And I don't know that that's necessarily due to like the salmon population overfeeding on them. I think a lot of it has to do with water quality, and their spawning habitat has been taken away. So if you are lucky enough to live in a location that has them, take advantage of them and target the fish that are feeding on them. And yeah, guys, I hope this was helpful. I love doing these because these are the types of things that I think are truly important and that anglers really need to know. But if you've got other fun facts about alewife, other than how they were how they were named alewives, throw it up in the comments section for the rest of us so that we can learn from your knowledge as well. And if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. Let me know you want me to continue doing 5 things you need to know about forage species. And stay tuned. We'll have another video coming out tomorrow.